In February 1971, two teenage kids who were hitchhiking found something terrible in Lake Panasoffkee, Florida. For more than 50 years, nobody knew who she was. On February 19, 1971, two teenage hitchhikers found a body partly underwater beneath a highway bridge in Lake Panasoffkee. They were very shocked by what they saw, so they called the police right away. The police came to the scene very quickly. The body had been in the water and outside for a long time, so it was very badly damaged. A man-size 36 belt was wrapped tightly around her neck, which showed that someone strangled her to death. The police thought the crime happened several weeks before they found her. This made it really hard to figure out who she was and what happened to her. The woman was wearing a green shirt, green checkered pants, and a green flowery poncho. Things found with her included a white gold watch and a gold necklace. On her ring finger, she wore a gold ring with a clear stone, which made people think she might have been married. Because the case was so sad and mysterious, and because no one knew her name, the media and police started calling her Little Miss Panasoffkee. The nickname showed both how sad her death was and how important it was to solve the case. Over time, the detectives were able to learn some things about her. They figured out she was probably between 17 and 24 years old, about 5 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed around 115 pounds. She had dark hair and brown eyes, and her clothes matched the green and yellow colors of the shawl found at the scene. One of her ribs had been broken at the time she died. This made the police think that the killer might have knelt on her chest while strangling her with the belt. Even though the police worked really hard, they couldn't figure out who the woman was or what happened. The case eventually went cold, which means they stopped working on it. Little Miss Panasoffkee became a mystery that no one could solve and a sad reminder of lives that ended too soon. The body was dug up again in February 1986, so they could look at it more carefully with better tools. Scientists tried to rebuild what her face looked like in 1971 and again in 2012. In October 2025, almost 55 years after they found her, the Sumter County Sheriff's Office announced they finally figured out who Little Miss Lake Panasoffkee was. Her real name was Maureen Lu Minor Rowan. The big breakthrough didn't come from DNA tests, but from new fingerprint technology. The police used a new system to match fingerprints from the 1971 body with old records. The fingerprints matched a 1970 arrest record under the name Maureen Lu Minor Rowan. This was the proof they needed to confirm who she was. Maureen, who people also called Cookie, was born on March 21, 1949 in Maine. By the late 1960s, Maureen had moved to Florida, probably looking for work and wanting to live on her own. In her early 20s, Maureen became a mom to 2 young children. She had to deal with the hard parts of being a parent while also being separated from her husband. During this time, she lived near the Tampa area. Her life involved traveling around a lot, which suggests she was looking for opportunities and maybe wanted to feel free. Maureen didn't know that danger was coming her way. Her normal daily life of work, family, and traveling hid the fact that something bad was about to happen to her. After they figured out who she was, the police learned that Maureen had never been reported missing. This explains why her case stayed unsolved and why no one knew her name for more than 50 years. Once they confirmed who she was, the police turned their attention to her separated husband, Charles Emery Rowan, Sr. They named him as a person of interest. Records show that he died in 2015, which made it hard to get information directly from him. The police said that right now there isn't enough proof to officially call Charles Rowan a suspect. Maureen's daughter Anne said she was not just a cold case number. They thought that their mother had left them and never came back. Maureen's daughter added that she was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a woman who deserved to live a full life. We are deeply grateful to the Sumter County detectives and the local community who never gave up on her. Now that she has been identified, our family can begin to heal. We ask anyone who has any information about who killed our mother to please come forward. The mystery of who she was is now solved, but the case is still open, and police are still looking at all clues, hoping to find new details about what happened to Maureen. The police are asking the public for information, especially from anyone who knew Maureen or Charles during the years 1970 to 1971. They say that even small details could be really important in helping solve this case from so many years ago and bringing answers to Maureen's sad story. Sumter County Sheriff Patrick Breeden said, "This breakthrough shows the hard work of every investigator who has worked on this case over the past 5 decades. It reflects how committed the Sumter County Sheriff's Office is to finding the truth and giving closure to families." Although we still have a lot of work to do to bring justice to Cookie and her family, I am incredibly proud of the men and women of my office who continue to work hard on our cold cases and keep trying despite the challenges that some of them present. She added, to Cookie's family, "Our thoughts and prayers are with you. We know your hearts are heavy with sadness. Cookie was your mother. She was your sister and your friend. She has never been forgotten and has had a big impact on our community." In May 1975, a mother and her baby were found in an apartment in Concord, New Hampshire. The sad case remained unsolved for nearly 5 decades, leaving the family and community looking for answers. Judith "Judy" Lord was born in 1953 as the 11th of 14 children. She spent her childhood years in Maine before her family decided to move to New Hampshire. It was during a time of change that Judith met Gregory Lord Sr., who was home from the military on leave at the time. They connected quickly and eventually got married. After their wedding, Judith went with her husband to Germany, where their son, Gregory Lord Jr., was born. Life in Germany was a big change for Judith, moving from her familiar home to a new country and culture. Despite the adjustments, she embraced being a wife and mother, taking care of her family in a foreign place. The Lord family later came back to the United States and settled in Concord, New Hampshire. In March 1975, they moved into the Concord Gardens apartments, starting a new chapter in their lives. Judith became someone everyone loved among her neighbors and friends. She was known for her warmth and her love for playing the piano, which brought joy to people around her. Despite the calm and happiness in her daily life, Judith didn't know that something tragic was about to happen to her in the near future. On May 20, 1975, the manager of Concord Gardens Apartments came to collect late rent. He heard the cries of Judith's baby boy from inside the apartment, so he knocked on the door but got no answer. Worried about the child's safety, he went into the apartment and found something horrible. Inside, the manager found Judith naked on the bed with a blue plastic covering placed over her face. Shocked by what he saw, he immediately called the police, who arrived quickly to investigate what happened to her. The apartment showed clear signs of a violent fight. A curtain had been ripped from the wall with its rod broken, a lampshade was knocked over, and an alarm clock was on the floor, stopped at 1:47. These details suggested that a fight had happened shortly before she died. Meanwhile, her 20-month-old son was found safe in a crib in another room, unharmed from the violence that killed his mother. The autopsy later confirmed that Judith died from being strangled. The police also found evidence of a violent fight and indecent assault. Hairs were found on her body and bed, along with towels containing male DNA fluid. This provided important physical evidence for the investigation. As the police looked deeper into the case, they learned that earlier in May 1975, Gregory Lord Sr. had physically hurt Judith and then moved in with his grandmother across the street. When he moved, he took all the apartment's furniture except for a bed and crib. In the middle of this marriage trouble, Judith had chosen to step away from her job at McCurley's nursing home, wanting distance from her troubled home life. As the investigation continued, evidence from the crime scene was carefully collected and studied. The police first focused on 3 possible suspects: Judith's separated husband and 2 of her neighbors. Gregory gave an alibi for the time of the crime and was cleared of suspicion. One of the neighbors was also eliminated as a suspect after evidence didn't link them to the case. With these people cleared, the police turned their attention to Ernest Theodore Gable, a 24-year-old who lived next door to Judith. Gable shared a wall with Judith's apartment, and several witnesses said that she had been afraid of him. This closeness and history of scaring her made him a person of interest. As the investigation went on, physical evidence started to point toward Gable, suggesting a possible connection to the brutal crime. The police found Gable's fingerprints on the outside of Judith's windows, making suspicions stronger that he had been near the apartment or had messed with it. However, early forensic tests came to wrong conclusions that accidentally removed him from the suspect list. This created big obstacles for law enforcement and prosecutors. This forensic mistake caused the investigation to stop for decades, leaving the case unsolved and the violent end of Judith's life a mystery. Despite these discoveries, the investigation eventually stopped. Without enough leads or suspects, the case went cold. After 4 decades, in 2015, the FBI publicly said that many hair comparison tests done during that time were unreliable. This revelation confirmed that important forensic evidence in cases like Judith's had been handled wrong, explaining why the investigation had struggled to get results for so long. Decades after the first investigation, the case was reopened for a fresh look, producing important breakthroughs. After another decade, in November 2025, advances in DNA technology allowed forensic specialists to test the male DNA fluid found at the crime scene, which conclusively matched Ernest Theodore Gable. The outdated hair comparison tests that had previously led the police in the wrong direction were looked at again and corrected. This confirmed that microscopic evidence from the scene also pointed directly to Gable. These findings finally made the physical evidence match up with suspicions that had existed for decades. By the time the case was looked at again, Gable had already died. His life ended in Los Angeles in February 1987 at the age of 36, meaning he would never face legal punishment for ending Judith's life so violently. On the night of the crime, Judith had gone to a volleyball game at the apartment complex. Afterward, she and a couple of other neighbors went to the apartment that Gable shared with his wife, Linda, who was hosting the gathering. Her husband was not there at the time. The last time anyone besides Gable saw Judith was around 11:30 p.m. that evening when she left the apartment. After Judith's body was found the next day, some of her neighbors said they had heard screaming coming from inside her apartment in the middle of the night. Judith had told people that she was afraid of Gable and thought that he would hurt her. Judith's sister said that he said, "Someday I am going to get me a piece of that white meat." Despite Gable's death, the investigation was officially closed, recognizing him as the person responsible for Judith's death. The cold case unit noted that charges would have been filed if he had been alive, showing how serious his actions were and how certain they were of his guilt. New Hampshire authorities emphasized how important this resolution was. The Attorney General expressed hope that the conclusion of the investigation would bring some closure to Judith's family, who had gone through nearly 5 decades of uncertainty and sadness. Judith's son, Gregory Lord Jr., said, "I do not remember my mother. I was young. I always keep her memory inside my heart. She will always be with me. I am told I look just like my mom, and I am proud of that. I have been through a lot in my life, and in the dark times I have always thought of my mom." In 2013, a young woman was found injured in Minneapolis, Minnesota after being assaulted, and evidence from her examination was sent for testing, only to sit untouched for years. Details about Melissa Zimmerman's early life and background were never made available to the public, leaving much of her personal history unknown. In 2013, she was attacked and indecently assaulted in Minneapolis, an incident that changed the course of her life and put her at the center of a troubling investigation. The assault left her needing immediate help, and what happened that day later became a main focus for law enforcement and the courts. Melissa had been out at an event when she got separated from her group. She was then approached by a man who offered her a cell phone. When the cell phone didn't work, the man pushed her into a ditch and climbed on top of her. He then put his hands on her neck and took off her leggings and underwear, assaulting her before leaving her in the ditch. Everything that followed came from the moment she was found after the attack. A person passing by came across Melissa and quickly called 911, making sure she got emergency help. First responders brought her to Hennepin County Medical Center, where she had an assault examination. The evidence collected during that process was sent to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension for testing. This marked the beginning of what should have been a thorough investigation. In the days that followed, the police worked to identify the person responsible for the assault. The investigators knew that finding the person behind the attack was essential, and the evidence gathered was expected to play a big role. However, despite how serious the case was, progress stopped over time. The assault kit, which should have been tested right away, remained untested for years. This delay created a big gap in the investigation and left crucial evidence unused. What should have been a straightforward step in the case, instead, became a symbol of the system's failure to act promptly. Despite the lack of movement, the case was officially closed in 2013. The authorities recorded that Melissa did not wish to proceed, concluding that there was nothing more to do. This decision stopped any ongoing efforts to identify the perpetrator or continue the investigation further. Melissa later disputed this claim in court, stating that she had no memory of ever being asked whether she wanted to continue with the case. Her dispute added another layer of concern, highlighting the disconnect between her experience and the official record. The unresolved nature of the evidence and the long delay remained central issues as her case continued to get attention. More than a decade later, in 2024, a separate criminal investigation involving an attempted killing and an assault led the police to a suspect named Mohammed Bouli. During that investigation, Bouli gave a DNA sample as part of standard procedures. That sample became important when it was compared with older records connected to unsolved cases. The DNA collected from Bouli matched the evidence saved in Melissa's 2013 assault kit. This unexpected connection linked the new investigation with her earlier case, which had been mostly inactive for years. The match provided the breakthrough that had been missing since the original incident. Once the DNA match was confirmed, the prosecutors reopened the cold case and began reviewing the evidence that had been left untouched for a long time. They proceeded to charge Bouli with first-degree criminal conduct and kidnapping, marking the beginning of a renewed effort to pursue accountability. The case moved forward toward trial, supported by the long-delayed forensic results. In November 2025, a jury found 36-year-old Bouli guilty on both charges. During sentencing, he received 235 months, nearly 20 years in prison. This marked the end of what had become a cold case assault investigation, brought back to life only after renewed attention from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Melissa said, "It is amazing how one person, one awful person, can just waste so much time, energy, and resources. And so, I am glad that the jury found him guilty, and that they were able to take into account all of the evidence that everybody was able to piece together after such a long time." The reopening of the case was made possible in part by the office's Assault Kit Initiative team, which had been working through a backlog of untested assault kits. Their efforts allowed overlooked evidence to be processed and connected to active investigations, including Melissa's. The long delay highlighted the importance of addressing such backlogs. When the sentencing took place, Melissa spoke publicly about the experience. She explained that the years of waiting and the absence of follow-up from the investigators caused additional hardship. She denied ever telling officers she did not wish to move forward with prosecution and encouraged other survivors to consider undergoing an assault test kit even when it feels frightening. Melissa said, "I wanted to give up a lot, but if I would not have done it that day, I would not have been able to send a horrible, horrible person to jail finally." Melissa's husband told the court, When do the victims get to decide whether someone is prosecuted for a crime that was obvious? Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty said, "Our thoughts are with the victim and her loved ones today as Mr. Booley is finally being held accountable for this terrible crime. It should not have taken more than a decade to get here. Under my watch and with the dedication of our incredible staff, survivors of indecent assault will be given the support, resources, and dignity they deserve." In December 2004, a man failed to come home from work, leaving his family worried and desperate for answers. Despite community efforts and a reward offered, the investigation gradually lost momentum, leaving his family in uncertainty for over 2 decades. On October 5, 2025, human remains were found floating in Mansfield Hollow Lake, Connecticut by the local fire department. Further searches by a specialized emergency services unit led to the recovery of a submerged vehicle, a Mazda pickup. Items found inside, including parking passes and a name tag, provided crucial evidence. By November 13, 2025, DNA analysis confirmed the sad truth. The remains belonged to 51-year-old Robert Cavanaugh. The discovery finally brought closure to a long-standing missing person case, marking the end of a tragic story that had left a community and family searching for answers for more than 20 years. Robert was born in Salem, Massachusetts, the oldest of 9 children. He grew up in Ellington, graduating from Ellington High School. After high school, he married Margaret Williamson and worked as a long-haul truck driver for a New Britain-based tool and hardware company. This job required him to spend a lot of time on the road and away from home. After his time on the road, Robert changed careers and became a correctional officer in Connecticut. Robert was married and had 4 children, forming a family that on the surface looked typical. Yet beneath this outside appearance, he struggled with personal and mental health difficulties that weighed on him more and more over time. These struggles largely went unnoticed by those around him. Despite these challenges, Robert didn't know about the danger that lay ahead. On December 24, 2004, Robert's family grew worried when he didn't come home from work and couldn't be reached. Alarmed by his sudden disappearance, they immediately called the local police to file a missing person report, hoping to learn where he was as quickly as possible. The police started an investigation to figure out where Robert might be, gathering information from his home, workplace, and anyone who might have seen him in the days leading up to his disappearance. The police were told that Robert may have been struggling with mental health challenges and could have needed medical attention. This detail shaped how urgent the search was. Following the initial report, law enforcement issued a missing person alert that included specific details about Robert's 1996 Mazda B 2300 pickup truck. The alert was meant to help the public identify his vehicle and provide any information that could lead to finding him safely. In 2006, the Carol Sunamdi Carrington Foundation stepped in to support the ongoing search, offering a $5,000 reward for information that might lead to Robert's safe return. This effort showed the concern and persistence of both his family and the broader community as they continued to hope for his recovery. At the time of his disappearance, it was believed that Robert had left behind a note suggesting he might have planned to end his own life. Despite this, the search for him continued, with law enforcement and family members keeping up their efforts to find any trace of his presence. Over time, however, the intensity of the investigation went down. While the search for Robert remained open, the case eventually lost public attention, leaving many questions unanswered and his disappearance unresolved. The discovery of Robert's remains, combined with the recovered personal items, allowed the police to officially close the missing person case. Family members praised the investigators and the medical examiner's office for their handling of the case, calling it phenomenal. A private funeral was arranged to finally put Robert to rest. His daughter, Diana Cavanaugh, said he definitely struggled with mental illness toward the end. When this happened, he was just struggling a lot more. She emphasized the importance of mental health support. She said, "It has been an important part of my family's journey to be open about mental health and how important it is to have help and resources to deal with it."